Jaxson Dart is the best quarterback in the entire country. I don't care what anybody says.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, I'm Stephen Willis, a former staff member at Ole Miss and a 10-year veteran member of the national media with Yahoo Sports. Thank you very much for tuning in today. Today on the show, we talk about how Phil Steele rated Jaxson Dart as the number 2 quarterback for next year's NFL draft. And you know what? I think he underrated him. He may not look the best on a spreadsheet, but he also looks the best on a football field. We continue our W's and L's also looking at October for the Ole Miss Rebels. This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. We're free and available on all the podcast apps and on YouTube. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day, and a special hello to the everydayers who make the show what it is. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. It's a really interesting situation to where I think Jaxson Dart is the best quarterback in the entire country. And I realize that if you want to look at completely spreadsheet and intangibles and things that can be measured that is not on the football field, other players like Drew Aller ends up on the list of the top-rated quarterbacks in all of college football. But I'm not a person that necessarily believes in that. Carson Beck might be the best quarterback in college football. It's possible, but is it also possible that the talent just is so good around him that it kind of makes up for the deficiencies that he already has? Maybe it masks that just a little bit. Is that possible? Maybe. What about Shaduer Sanders at Colorado? He's a 4-8 quarterback. You're going to tell me that the best quarterback in the entire country went 4-8 a year ago? And there's really not much of a sign that any drastic improvement is going to happen this year. Jalen Milroe played for a national championship a year ago. He did. He played for the national championship. But is he that improved in his passing game that he's going to be transformed into a different type of quarterback instead of just an athlete playing the quarterback position? Brady Cook's a pretty good quarterback. Dylan Gabriel's a good quarterback. But none of them, in my opinion, have the total package of a Jaxson Dart. Jaxson Dart's arm is strong enough. His speed is enough. He's got the size to where he is a little bit a miniature Tim Tebow. And a lot of Jaxson Dart's NFL comp stuff and people talking about the NFL kind of mirrors what Tim Tebow went through in his last year. Even though Tebow won Heisman's and national titles, it was at a different level, essentially. But the measurables are not bad. They're not. I think Jaxson Dart gets hit because he is Lane Kiffin's quarterback, and Lane Kiffin has the reputation of being able to make everything work, no matter how good a player is. Jaxson Dart, in my opinion, if you just look at the quarterbacks that have been on campus since Lane Kiffin's been there, Jaxson Dart's better than Matt Corral. He is a better quarterback than Matt Corral. He might not have the swag and all of that stuff, but Jaxson Dart on the field performs better than Jaxson Dart. And he also has a skill set that is more likely to translate to the next level. If you want to talk about the measurables, the spreadsheet stuff, there you go. But the where Jaxson Dart separates is his on-the-field activity. Jaxson Dart has answered every single bell that has been thrown his way against everybody in 2023. In the fourth quarter, when Ole Miss needed a big play, Jaxson Dart made the big play. Jaxson Dart willed this team to victory. His leadership on this team is at such a high level that it kind of lifts up every one of his compatriots as well. And with his talent, with his leadership, with his ability to make plays and be an extremely clutch player, I do think that Jaxson Dart is the most clutch quarterback potentially at Ole Miss ever, not named John Darnell. John Darnell had the pass to Reed Hines against Georgia. He had a pass against to Rich Jebbia against Tulane as far as game winners on the last play that happened in the same year. They also had a couple of passes dropped. He had a ball in the air to win the game against LSU. and he had a ball in the air to win the game against somebody else as well. John Darnell was a very clutch quarterback. He's not going to be in a Mount Rushmore for best quarterbacks out there, but he was a clutch quarterback, and I wanted to give John Darnell his due. But Jaxson Dart, ever since essentially that 99-yard drive where he took Ole Miss down the field in the rain against Mississippi State and a potential tying drive, Ole Miss ended up having to go for 2 to try and tie it up. But that tying drive of going 99 yards, that started to write the story on Jaxson Dart. Now, Ole Miss tried to get a little bit too cute on the 2-point conversion play, and Mississippi State made a really good play. That wasn't on Jaxson Dart. But that springboarded Jaxson Dart into 2023. In the Tulane game, Ole Miss needed a big play at the end. It was no doubt that it was going to happen. Georgia Tech was tight in the fourth quarter. A blowout happened. Whenever Ole Miss is needed to make a play, he does it. I compare Jaxson Dart as far as the intangibles, as far as the unknown quantities, the things you can't put on the spreadsheet, all of the intangibles essentially, to a Connor Shaw. It was South Carolina's quarterback back in the early 2010s when they were winning 11 games a year. He just played college football at a very high level. Now, he did not have any of the spreadsheet attributes that even Jaxson Dart has, but he just won football games. And Jaxson Dart has that same type of leadership, that same type of magnetic personality to take a team to the next level. So, in summation, Jaxson Dart, I would not trade him for Connor Beck right now. I think Georgia fans would even tell you they would take Jaxson Dart. Auburn fans would bend over backwards to get him. Alabama fans would take him right now. Florida, let's don't even get started on Florida. Tennessee would take him over Nico at this moment. Vanderbilt, Vanderbilt would make a deal for the devil with him. Arkansas would take him right now. Mississippi State would take him right now. LSU would take him right now. Texas would take him right now. Texas A&M would take him right now. And that's over Connor Weigman and Quin Ewers. Oklahoma would take him right now. I'm not saying they don't have talented guys, but they would take him right now. Everybody in the league would take him at this moment. Everybody in the Big Ten would take him at this moment. This is how you know that he's a good quarterback. If you have a trade situation to where you can trade a quarterback, your team would take Jaxson Dart over your quarterback. That's how you know how good Jaxson Dart is. Now, I'm not saying there's not other good players. I'm not saying there's not going to be people having good years. I'm saying that just in a one-for-one type situation, Jaxson Dart would win that vote against every other quarterback in the country because of that on-field intangible that he brings and the skills, the spreadsheet skills, the combine skills that are just good enough. Like I said, Jaxson Dart gets hit because he is Lane Kiffin's quarterback, and everybody assumes that Lane Kiffin's quarterback is going to always be good no matter who they are. Well, this is probably the best Lane Kiffin quarterback that he has ever coached. It is. Head coach. When he was assistant in Alabama, it's a different story because I think he coached Tua at one point and Jalen Hurts. But you look at USC, Jaxson Dart's better than anybody that was at USC. Jaxson Dart's better than anybody at FAU. Jaxson Dart is a top-level quarterback, and I think Ole Miss fans need to realize how special this season can be. Because you have the top quarterback in the entire country, in my opinion. He might not get the spreadsheet awards and all of that, but there's nobody that anybody would rather have on their team than him. And you have the best wide receiver in all of college football. Ole Miss has a chance to be a next-level special offense. So thanks again for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen of the day. We go into a tricky October schedule for Ole Miss that's going to say a lot on Ole Miss's playoff goals. We will explain. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on Game Time actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. And with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seats, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. Like I said, they have the lowest price guarantee, but they also have event cancellation protection, job loss protection. Basically, all of the customer service bells and whistles that you would be interested in, they have. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms apply. Create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day and you have to turn down the volume with all of that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every single day to bring you the biggest stories without all of that screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, news, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. July 2nd at 7 p.m. That's less than a week away. You can join us at Walk-Ons in Ridgeland, Mississippi for a little meet and greet. It's going to be kind of an informal thing, but it is growing a little bit at the moment. I confirmed early in the week with the GM that the location is good. We're going to have Justin from Stewart's Cajun Dill Pickles, and also Scott from the College Corner is going to provide a little bit of swag for this event. I got to go pick that up on the way to Walk-On. So it should be really cool. And there's also still time to join the Grove Collective at thegrovecollective.com. Join today. Help Ole Miss football be elite. Really interesting stuff. So we need to talk about what Ole Miss has in October, because October is going to be the point where the rubber meets the road for Ole Miss football this season. And what I mean by that is there's 3 games that Ole Miss should be favored in. 7 to 10 points favored in, to be clear. 2 of those are going to be road games, though, which could be tricky. And one of them, actually both of them, have kind of classic trap tendencies. So looking at this game, we're going to talk about the W's. It is the South Carolina Gamecocks on October 5th in Williams Brice. South Carolina is a very tough place to play at that time. And also, it being a night game means it's going to be even more difficult. I was hoping for 11 a.m. on this game because it has a chance to be very, very sleepy at 11. But at nighttime, this is going to be really jacked up. And we're going to talk about this game pretty much this whole segment, honestly. Because South Carolina fans, in their infinite wisdom, have completely built this game up to the point where Juice Wells is the storyline for this Ole Miss South Carolina game. It's not whether or not Ole Miss come over and get the win, because Ole Miss is going to be favored in that game. South Carolina wants to win the game to stick it to Juice Wells. They do not care about anything else, but they want to stick it to Juice Wells. Now, if Juice comes out and has a day, like there was an article the other day about how he was the next Des Bryant, essentially. And if he comes out and has a big game against South Carolina and kind of shuts them up, for lack of a better word, I think that they would tumble pretty quickly. Now, South Carolina plays Kentucky. They play LSU. If they win either of those games, it would be an upset, honestly. I'm not saying they can't do it, but there's a good chance that they'll be 2-2 or maybe 2-2 or 3-2 coming into the Ole Miss game, which means the fan base is going to be up. And it's going to be up to the Ole Miss players to really turn up against South Carolina. Jaxson Dart is going to need to show off some of that leadership in Williams Brice Stadium. Like Bill Flowers said, that's a tricky, difficult place to play. And I believe him. But when you look at this Juice Wells thing, all of the attention is going to be on Juice Wells in this ballgame. And that's because when he was a wide receiver 2 years ago in 2022, 68 catches, 928 yards, 6 touchdowns for Spencer Rattler. And he was getting talked up as the best wide receiver in all of the SEC a year ago. And then he got injured and a whole bunch of stuff happened. He had to have surgery at the end of the season. South Carolina got all bent out of shape because he got injured, and he came to Ole Miss, got his surgery, and he sat out through spring. I think he's probably fairly close to full go if he isn't full go already. But Antwane Juice Wells is going to be a big factor in this ballgame. And he's going to be a big factor because the attention being on him means that the attention is not going to be on this guy. And this guy is probably the best wide receiver in all of college football. When you look at Trey Harris, 54 catches, 985 yards, 8 touchdowns a year ago in a little over 9 games. He literally missed like 3 games. He got injured the first drive against Tulane, and he played like 3 snaps against Alabama. The rest of those 3 games that right there, he did not play very much at all. I think if he plays, he has close to 70 catches, 1,200 yards, 8 to 12 touchdowns for Ole Miss. And then you have Mr. Reliable in Jordan Watkins. 53 catches, 741 yards, 3 touchdowns with a broken hand the last 4 or 5 games of the season. That should not be overstated. A broken hand. These wide receivers are the reason that I think Ole Miss is going to be able to handle South Carolina. You have Caden Prieskorn as well, who just was showing out against Penn State. He had 10 catches, 136 yards, 2 touchdowns, had a 2-point conversion catch as well. Heck, I think he was the offensive MVP. It was a really big game for Caden Prieskorn. But this is why that I have Ole Miss listed as a W's, because I think the weapons are going to be far too much. South Carolina a year ago was shaky up front in the trenches. Their defensive line is supposed to be pretty good, I think, but their offensive line is not. And if you look at what Ole Miss has brought in on the defensive line, it doesn't seem like South Carolina is going to be able to move the football. Now, the offensive coordinator at South Carolina, I think he came over from Arkansas, which means there's going to be a little bit of Kendall Briles in what he does. So the offenses are going to be similar. And Lenore Sellers, I think that's his name. If it's not, I apologize. Playing a quarterback, coming in, this be his 5th start, but it will be his 3rd SEC game. So we'll see exactly how it looks. I don't think that South Carolina has the talent to upset Ole Miss in this game. I just don't. I think they're going to be up and they're going to be as high as they can possibly be. But as a team, this is going to be a difficult ask for South Carolina. And because of that, I think Ole Miss wins this game and wins it, honestly, by a touchdown or 2. Because like I said, these 3 games, Ole Miss is probably going to be between a 7-point favorite and a 10-point favorite by the time the game is played. Thanks again for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen. Oklahoma will come to Oxford talented. Will that be enough? And is LSU an overrated paper tiger? Or does Ole Miss need to be concerned going down to Tiger Stadium? So Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV Channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every single league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV Channels app. Be part of history. Really interesting stuff. And like I said, I gave South Carolina a segment because that game just has a chance to be weird. Okay. It's not likely going to be overly good or anything like that. Because of the cauldron, because of the intensity, there's been very few environments that Ole Miss has walked in the last 10, 15 years that will match what Williams Brice at night will look like. So that game has a chance to be tricky. We can all remember what it was like in 2009 when Ole Miss went into Williams Brice Stadium and Houston Nutt refused to play Dexter McCluster at tailback until it was far too late. Interesting stuff. All right. Next up is at LSU. And the South Carolina game is a little bit of a trap game. And another reason it gets tricky is because of the game the next week at LSU. I think Ole Miss has a better football team than LSU going into this season. I think LSU has lost their Heisman-winning quarterback and 2 first-round NFL wide receivers. And yes, LSU is going to have talent. Nobody's saying they're going to be bad, but they're going to take a step back. It just happens that way. You don't just go from generational quarterback to generational quarterback. Hey, look at Ole Miss. For 10 years after Dexter McCluster, the next Dexter McCluster was being recruited by Ole Miss. You always think that you have the next big thing, and oftentimes you do not. But LSU is probably going to take a step back offensively. They'll probably be a little bit better defensively because of the athletes. I don't know that they're going to be that much better, but they're going to be better in that thing. So I'm thinking LSU is going to be closer to a 7 or 8 win team this year, and next year they're going to be a little bit better. I like Garrett Nussmeier as a player. He's a good quarterback, but he's not Jaden Daniels. Without Jaden Daniels a year ago, LSU was a 5-win team. Jaden Daniels covered so many deficiencies up on that football team that they were able to win games that they had no business doing. Like, without Jaden Daniels, they get beat in Oxford by 35 points. It was the Jaden Daniels show, and that was about it. But I think Ole Miss is going to win the game. This is going to be the lowest line at kickoff at the entire time. Probably 4 to 7 points Ole Miss is favored by. Right now, I think LSU is favored, but the season hasn't started yet. So any deficiencies are a little bit unknown. Now, the last game that I want to talk about are the Oklahoma Sooners. And this is their first trip to Oxford, Mississippi, and I hate it for Oklahoma that this is an 11 o'clock game. I hate that Oklahoma does not get the night game treatment when they come to Oxford. This treat, this gift that the SEC has bestowed on Oklahoma by giving them a trip to the Grove in year one. This is a reward for coming into the Southeastern Conference. It's going to be thrown away a little bit because it's not at night. It just kind of is what it is. Oklahoma is having to replace all 5 offensive linemen. They have a first-time starter in Jackson Arnold at quarterback. Very talented guy, still a first-time starter. So the earlier you get Oklahoma, probably the better off you are. And if I'm not mistaken, this game is right after the Red River Shootout game, or at least a week or 2 after that. So that will at least play into it. Oklahoma has a chance to be a pretty good team. If you look at the blue chip ratio, you talk about that all the time. If you look at that, Penn State, Oklahoma, all those teams that they put up 4-star or better players, like 70% of their roster. Oklahoma has that. This is a talented team. I just don't know if they're particularly good yet. Now, they might be coming. But I don't know if they're particularly good at this moment. I think Ole Miss will be favored by somewhere between 10 to 14 points in this game. And if Ole Miss can navigate these 3 games, and set up a road game against Arkansas the first week of November, the game against Georgia, you have Florida and you have Mississippi State as the last part of the schedule, you are in position to play for all the marbles. If Ole Miss does what I predicted them to do in the 7 wins, if they start off 7-0 before they go to Fayetteville, everything is in front of Ole Miss. Every goal that you can possibly have. And I'm not just talking about, hey, let's do this, or, I'm talking big goals. I'm talking what used to be the Crystal football goals. And I guess now it is like a bronze tower or something like that. That becomes a real thing and sets up a potential game against Georgia that's different. It's going to be just different. If Ole Miss is 8-1, or 8-1 going up against Georgia, this will be a different situation. Ole Miss playing that game, that has a chance to be the game, the Archie Manning Mule game. That Georgia game has a chance to be that. Georgia's not talking, and they won't talk. You're not going to have a Steve Kiner pop off about Jaxson Dart. That's not going to happen. But if Ole Miss can win that game, if Jaxson Dart can have his Heisman-type moment in that football game, it'll completely change everything. I've got Ole Miss starting out 7-0. Last year, I had them, I think 9-3 was my projected record. They ended up going 10-2. So I'm going to get there, but we'll see exactly how this goes. We still have Arkansas, Georgia, Florida, and Mississippi State to go. We'll see exactly how it happens. I think it's 8-0 is what I had to start. So we will see what they can do. Thanks for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen of the day. We have the most perspective surrounding Ole Miss sports. It's one of the many reasons why we are the number one Ole Miss podcast out there, and thank you for that. But for your second listen, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every single league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV Channels app. And for those of you on YouTube, we will send you there right now. Howdy toddy, everyone.